Sir, last warning. Hand over your ID or this gets a lot worse.
I'm standing on a public sidewalk. I haven't broken any law, and you know it.
You don't get to tell me how this works.
No, officer. The Constitution does.
Before we go any further into this intense confrontation, I need you to pause for a second. Have you ever seen an authority figure completely lose their cool just because someone knew their rights? It's a terrifying thing to watch, isn't it? If you believe that police officers should know the laws they enforce, hit that subscribe button right now. And drop a comment below. Tell me, if you were in Marcus's shoes, would you have handed over your ID or would you have stood your ground? This story is about to take a turn that Officer Braden never saw coming. The diner door opened and a few patrons stepped out, drawn by the commotion. Among them was the manager, a middle-aged woman wiping her hands on an apron. She looked from the officer to Marcus and hesitated. She knew Marcus. He came in every Tuesday. But the sight of a uniformed officer in a stance of aggression froze her. "Officer," Marcus said, "I am reaching into my interior jacket pocket to retrieve my wallet. I am doing this slowly. I am not consenting to a search, and I am not consenting to this detention. I am complying under duress to prevent you from escalating violence against a senior citizen." "Just get the ID," Braden snapped, stepping back slightly, his hand hovering over his taser now. Marcus moved with agonizing slowness. He used 2 fingers to draw out a slim leather wallet. He didn't open it immediately. He held it up. "Inside this wallet is my identification," Marcus said. "But before I hand it to you, I want you to look at the camera over your shoulder." Braden blinked and glanced quickly behind him. A young man in a hoodie was holding up a smartphone recording everything. 2 other people had phones out as well. "You are being recorded," Marcus continued. "Every word. You have detained a 62-year-old veteran on a public sidewalk for waiting for breakfast. You have escalated a non-event into a constitutional violation. If you take this ID, you are formalizing that violation." Braden snatched the wallet from Marcus's hand. "I don't need a lecture from you." He flipped the wallet open. He saw a driver's license. Marcus Elias Thorne. Address in a wealthy suburb. He saw a credit card. He saw a folded piece of paper. He didn't look deeper. He didn't check the second flap of the wallet where a heavy gold and silver badge rested against a leather backing. He was too focused on the driver's license, looking for a warrant, looking for anything to pin on this man who had dared to speak back to him. Dispatch run a 2729 on a Marcus Thorne. Braden spoke into his radio, his eyes never leaving Marcus. "No warrants," the radio crackled back 10 seconds later. "Clean record." Braden felt a surge of irrational anger. He wanted there to be something, a parking ticket, a failure to appear, anything. But there was nothing. He had a clean citizen in a customized suit standing in front of him and a crowd of people watching him fail. "You're lucky," Braden muttered, closing the wallet but not handing it back. "But you're still refusing to follow my order to leave the area." "I am not leaving," Marcus said. "I have a meeting." "That's it," Braden decided. He couldn't walk away. If he walked away now, he looked weak. He looked like he'd been schooled. And in Braden's world, you never let a suspect school you. "Turn around. Put your hands behind your back." "For what?" a woman in the crowd shouted. "He didn't do anything." "Back up," Braden yelled at the crowd. "Turn around now. You are under arrest for disorderly conduct and failure to obey." "I am complying," Marcus said, his voice dropping to a steely whisper. "But son, you are ending your career right now. You just don't know it yet." Braden didn't listen. He grabbed Marcus's left wrist and twisted it behind his back with unnecessary force. Marcus winced, a sharp pain shooting through his shoulder, an old injury from a shrapnel wound in Panama back in '89, but he didn't pull away. He didn't fight. He allowed his body to go limp, offering zero resistance, robbing the officer of any claim that he was fighting back. "Stop resisting!" Braden yelled anyway, playing to the script he had rehearsed in his head, the script that usually worked to justify force. "I am standing still," Marcus said loudly, projecting his voice for the smartphones recording him. "I am not resisting. I am a disabled veteran and a federal official. You are hurting my shoulder." "Tell it to the judge," Braden grunted, slapping the second cuff onto Marcus's right wrist. The metal ratcheted tight, biting into the skin. The crowd was getting louder. "He's an old man," someone shouted. "This is shameful," another voice cried out. The young man with the phone stepped closer, zooming in. "I got you, officer badge number 4922. I see you." Braden shoved Marcus toward the patrol car parked at the curb. Marcus walked with his head high despite the humiliating position of his arms. He didn't look at the ground. He looked straight ahead, his expression one of profound disappointment rather than fear. "You have my wallet," Marcus said, as Braden pushed him against the side of the cruiser. "In that wallet behind the driver's license are my credentials. Did you look at them?" "I saw your license," Braden said, patting Marcus down, roughly checking his pockets. He pulled out a phone and keys, tossing them onto the hood of the car. "You need to look at the credentials," Marcus said calmly. "I am the Deputy Director of the Office of Inspector General for Veteran Affairs. I am a federal veteran advocate with federal law enforcement authority to audit and investigate. You are currently arresting a federal official who is on duty preparing to meet a whistleblower regarding veteran housing discrimination in this city." Braden paused for a microsecond. The words federal official and Inspector General filtered through the adrenaline haze, but his brain rejected them. This guy, a federal director? No way. Federal directors didn't stand on sidewalks in front of diners. Federal directors were white guys in D.C., not black men in this neighborhood. It was a bluff. It had to be a bluff. "Yeah, and I'm the King of England," Braden scoffed. He opened the back door of the cruiser. "Get in. I am requesting a supervisor be present on the scene immediately," Marcus stated as he was maneuvered into the cramped plastic seat. "You'll see a supervisor at the station." Braden slammed the door shut. The sound of the door closing was final, a heavy thud that separated Marcus from the world of the free. Through the window, he saw the blurry faces of the citizens he had spent his life serving, first in uniform, then in suits. They looked horrified. The young man with the camera gave Marcus a thumbs up, mouthing, "I got it." Marcus nodded once. That video was the nail in the coffin. Braden walked around to the driver's side, picked up Marcus's keys and phone, and threw them onto the passenger seat. He sat down behind the wheel, his chest heaving slightly. He felt a mixture of triumph and anxiety. He had won the physical confrontation. He had asserted control. But the way the crowd had looked at him, and the way this man sat in the back, silent and regal, it gnawed at him. He looked in the rearview mirror. Marcus was staring right at him, not with anger, with pity. "You have made a catastrophic mistake, Officer Braden," Marcus said from the back seat. Braden turned the key in the ignition, revving the engine louder than necessary to drown out the voice. "Sit back and be quiet." The drive to the precinct took 15 minutes. It was a silence so heavy it felt like it had physical weight. The cruiser smelled of industrial disinfectant and stale coffee, the scent of 1,000 bad nights and unhappy endings. Marcus leaned back against the hard plastic seat, adjusting his shoulders to alleviate the strain on his rotator cuff. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the rhythm of the road vibrate through him. His mind drifted back 30 years. He remembered the heat of the desert, the weight of a ruck on his back, the absolute clarity of mission he had felt as a young captain leading men into uncertain danger. He had served his country with honor. He had bled for the Constitution. He had retired a full bird colonel. And now here he was, handcuffed like a common criminal by a boy who hadn't even been born when Marcus was clearing bunkers in the Middle East. It wasn't just the personal indignity that stung. It was the systemic failure it represented. This was exactly why he did what he did now. As a federal advocate, he traveled the country investigating how veterans were treated, how they were housed, how they were medically cared for, and, yes, how they were policed. He was in town to meet a local rep about police harassment of homeless vets, and ironically, he had become the evidence he was looking for. In the front seat, the silence was starting to suffocate Officer Braden. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a cold, prickly feeling in his gut. He glanced at the wallet sitting on the passenger seat. The leather was expensive. Italian, maybe. He thought about what the man had said. Office of Inspector General. What if he's telling the truth? Braden shook his head. No. People lie to the police all the time. They claim they know the mayor, the chief, the president. It's always a lie. He was just a guy in a suit with an attitude problem. That's all. You comfortable back there? Braden asked, trying to sound tough, but his voice lacked the bite it had earlier. I have been in far worse places than this, officer, Marcus replied calmly. But I wonder if you are comfortable with what happens when we arrive. Do you have a mortgage? Do you have children? Don't you threaten me. Braden snapped his eyes, darting to the mirror. It's not a threat, Marcus said. It's a query regarding your financial stability. Because when the civil suit is filed and when the qualified immunity is stripped because you violated clearly established law, the burden often falls heavy on the individual. I hope you have savings. Braden didn't answer. He gripped the steering wheel tighter, his knuckles turning white. He turned on the radio, blasting the dispatch chatter to drown out the quiet voice of reason in the back seat. But he couldn't drown out the sinking feeling in his stomach. He drove a little faster, just wanting to get this over with, to hand this guy off to booking and wash his hands of it. He wanted to be back in his comfort zone where he was the law and everyone else was just a subject. But as the precinct came into view, a squat brick building surrounded by wire fencing, Braden felt a tremor in his hands. He was bringing a storm into his own house, and he was just starting to realize he didn't have an umbrella. The Sallyport door rattled open, and Braden drove the cruiser into the secure garage. He pulled Marcus out of the back seat. Marcus stepped out stiff, but upright. He didn't complain about the cuffs. He didn't ask for water. He just walked where he was pointed. They entered the processing area, a brightly lit room smelling of bleach and despair. Sitting behind the high booking desk was Sergeant Margaret Kowalski. She was in her late 50s, a woman with graying hair pulled back in a tight bun, and eyes that had seen every lie, every tragedy, and every mistake this city had to offer. She was drinking coffee from a mug that said, "World's Okayest Grandma." She looked up as Braden wrestled Marcus toward the bench. Her eyes scanned Marcus, the suit, the posture, the age, and then flicked to Braden. "What do we have here, Braden?" she asked, her voice raspy. "You bringing in the mayor's banker or something? Disorderly conduct." "Failure to obey," Braden muttered, placing Marcus's personal items on the counter. "Refused to ID during a stop." "I did not refuse," Marcus corrected gently. "I questioned the probable cause, and the ID is right there." He nodded toward the wallet Braden had tossed on the counter. Sergeant Kowalski frowned. She didn't like Braden. She thought he was a hothead, a liability waiting to happen. She reached out and took the wallet. "Uncuff him while I process this," Kowalski ordered. "He's a flight risk," Braden said stupidly. Kowalski gave him a look that could peel paint. "He's a senior citizen in a three-piece suit, Braden. Take the damn cuffs off." Braden sighed and unlocked the handcuffs. Marcus rubbed his wrists where red welts had already formed. "Thank you, Sergeant." Kowalski opened the wallet. She saw the driver's license. Then she flipped the leather flap that Braden had ignored. Her breath hitched. She stared at the badge. It was heavy, complex, and unmistakable to anyone who knew government credentials. The gold shield of the Department of Veterans Affairs flanked by the silver eagle of the Inspector General. Beneath it was a smart card with a holographic chip identifying Marcus Elias Thorne as a federal agent with top-secret clearance. Kowalski's face went pale. She looked at the card, then up at Marcus, then at Braden. "Braden," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "Where did you arrest this man?" "Outside Miller's Diner. Why?" "And you checked his ID." I ran his license. It was clean. Did you look at this? She held up the federal badge. Braden squinted at it. I didn't see that. You arrested a federal veteran advocate, Kowalski said, her voice rising to a shout. You arrested a colonel. This man has federal oversight authority. Do you have any idea what you've done? The room went dead silent. Two other officers typing reports stopped and looked over. He was loitering, Braden stammered, the color draining from his face. I was waiting for Councilman Reeves, Marcus said, his voice cutting through the air like a knife. We had a 9:30 appointment to discuss your department's treatment of homeless veterans. I believe I have now gathered sufficient first-hand data. Kowalski dropped the wallet as if it were burning hot. She practically ran around the desk. Sir, Colonel Thorne, I am so sorry. Please sit down. Let me get you water. She turned to Braden, her face twisting into fury. Get the captain. Now. Don't run. Braden stood frozen, his world collapsing. He looked at Marcus, who was simply adjusting his cufflinks, looking at Braden with that same calm, devastating pity. Go, Kowalski screamed. Braden turned and bolted toward the administrative hallway. Captain Richard Vance was a man who prided himself on running a tight ship. But when his office door flew open and a pale, shaking Officer Braden stammered out that he had arrested a federal official, Vance felt his ulcer flare up instantly. He stormed into the processing area 3 minutes later, buttoning his jacket. He saw Marcus Thorne sitting on a bench, not in a holding cell, holding a cup of water Sergeant Kowalski had provided. Marcus looked like he was presiding over a court-martial. Colonel Thorne, Captain Vance said, extending a hand as he approached, breathless. I am Captain Vance. I cannot apologize enough. There has been a terrible misunderstanding. Marcus stood up slowly. He did not take the captain's hand. He let the hand hang in the air until Vance awkwardly retracted it. This was not a misunderstanding, Captain, Marcus said coolly. A misunderstanding is when you spill coffee on someone. This was an unlawful deprivation of liberty under color of authority. This was a Fourth Amendment violation. This was an assault on a federal officer. I understand you're upset, Vance began, trying to use his negotiation voice. I am not upset, Marcus interrupted. I am litigious, and I am methodical. I want the preservation of evidence initiated immediately. I want Officer Braden's body camera footage downloaded and secured before he has a chance to tamper with it. I want the dashcam footage. I want the dispatch logs, and I want a copy of the incident report, which I assume he has not written yet, but I want his raw notes. We will absolutely cooperate with any inquiry, Vance said, sweating now. But surely we can resolve this, amicably. We can release you immediately, drop all charges. You don't have charges to drop, Marcus said, because there was no crime. You are releasing me because you have realized you stepped on a landmine, but the explosion has already happened. Braden was standing in the corner looking like a ghost. Marcus turned his gaze to him. That young man, Marcus pointed a long finger, is a danger to this community. Today it was me. I have resources. I have a team of lawyers. I have a badge. But what if it had been a 19-year-old kid coming home from work? What if it had been a homeless vet with PTSD? He would have hurt them. He would have ruined their lives. We will handle this internally, Vance promised. You will handle it internally, Marcus agreed. And the Department of Justice will handle it externally, and my civil attorneys will handle it financially. Marcus walked over to the counter, picked up his wallet, his keys, and his phone. He checked his phone. He had missed his meeting with the councilman. I am leaving now, Marcus said. I expect the digital files to be sent to my office by close of business today. If they are lost or corrupted, I will have FBI forensics here by morning. They will be there, Vance said, his head bowed. Marcus put on his veteran hat, adjusting the brim. He walked past Braden without looking at him. As he pushed open the heavy steel doors to the street, the sunlight hit him. He took a deep breath of free air. He was free, but he wasn't finished. Marcus Thorne didn't go home to rest. He went straight to his office. By 2 p.m., his legal team was assembled. By 4 p.m., the video from the diner bystander hit the internet. The title was simple: "Police arrest 62-year-old veteran for standing on sidewalk." It exploded. Within 3 hours, it had 1 million views. The image of Marcus, dignified in his suit, being twisted up by the aggressive young officer, struck a nerve across the nation. Then came the second wave of information, the reveal of who Marcus was. The man in cuffs is a federal veteran advocate. The man in cuffs is a retired colonel. The comments section was a bonfire of rage. He served his country, and this is how they treat him. That officer needs to be in prison. Respect to the colonel for staying calm. I would have lost it. 2 days later, the lawsuit was filed in federal district court. Thorne versus the city et al. It was a masterpiece of legal drafting. It didn't just allege unlawful arrest. It alleged a pattern and practice of racial profiling and harassment of veterans. The internal investigation into Officer Braden was swift and brutal, fueled by the public scrutiny. Investigators pulled his history. They found what Marcus had suspected. Braden had a habit of stopping suspicious older black men. He had a habit of escalating verbal disputes. He had 6 complaints for excessive force in 3 years, all dismissed by a lenient review board. But this time, there was no rug to sweep it under. The video was on every news channel. The councilman whom Marcus was supposed to meet gave a press conference standing beside Marcus, demanding accountability. The police union tried to defend Braden, releasing a statement about failure to comply and stressful situations. It backfired spectacularly. The public saw the video. They saw a man standing still, hands open, being attacked. The defense only made the department look more out of touch. Marcus gave one interview to a national news anchor. He sat in his study surrounded by his military medals and photos of his platoon. "It's not about me," Marcus told the camera, his voice grave. "I went home that night. I slept in my bed. But there are men and women who serve this country who are sleeping on the streets, and when they are treated like criminals for existing, they don't have a badge to flash. I am fighting this case for them. I am fighting so that Officer Braden is the last officer who thinks he can trample on the Constitution because he dislikes the color of a citizen's skin." 6 months later, the gavel came down, metaphorically speaking. The city settled. They had no choice. The evidence was overwhelming, and the depositions were disastrous for the department. The settlement was $1.2 million. Officer Kyle Braden was terminated for cause. His law enforcement certification was revoked, meaning he could never be a police officer in the state again. The last Marcus heard, Braden was working in a warehouse in another county, telling anyone who would listen that he got a raw deal. But the money didn't go to Marcus's retirement fund. In a press conference held on the steps of the courthouse, Marcus announced the creation of the Thorne Legal Defense Fund for veterans. Every cent of the $1.2 million would go toward providing legal representation for veterans wrongfully accused or harassed by police. "Justice is not a spectator sport," Marcus said into the microphones. "It requires action. It requires vigilance." The department was forced to implement new policies, mandatory de-escalation training, a duty to intervene for other officers, and a specific protocol for interactions with veterans. The final scene of our story takes us back to Miller's Diner. It's a year later. Marcus is standing on the sidewalk in the exact same spot. He is wearing the same navy suit, the same hat. He is waiting for a friend. A police cruiser rolls by. The officer inside a new rookie slows down. He looks at Marcus. He sees the dignity. He sees the man. He nods respectfully and drives on. Marcus watches the car disappear down the street. The wind blows gently, rustling the leaves of the street trees. He takes a deep breath. It's a good day. But as he stands there, a shadow passes over his eyes. He knows that if he had been wearing a hoodie instead of a suit, or if he had been a janitor instead of a colonel, that day might have ended very differently. He won, but the war isn't over. It's never really over. And that leaves us with a heavy question to consider tonight. Marcus Thorne had the rank, the resources, and the knowledge to fight back. But what about the people who don't? What happens to the man who can't quote the Supreme Court? Does the system work for them, or does it only work for those who can force it to? If this story moved you, if it made you think about the nature of justice and the price of freedom, please share it. We need to keep having these conversations. And tell me in the comments, do you think the $1.2 million settlement was enough punishment for the city, or should there have been more? Thanks for reading. Stay vigilant, stay safe, and never forget your rights.